Um, okay. So the first thing is that I want to ask you is, how long were you incarcerated?
Okay, I was arrested in 1996 and I'm sentenced to 25 years in 1997. So I have a 30-year sentence, 25 years and 5 years probation to pay back the money that I stole. And I did 21 and a half years.
Oh my God, Dia. So what was your charge?
I have 117 counts of organized fraud.
Okay. We won't. Wow. And you recently got out, right?
Yes, I was released in December 20th.
Okay. Boy, you poor girl. So can I ask, and just briefly, what circumstances led up to your incarceration? I mean, some people, you know, they had a very dysfunctional childhood, and there's lots of things, drug addiction. There's lots of things that,
Well, I
reasons
mean,
why people,
yeah, I think that, I mean, I didn't have a horrible childhood. I grew up in a very loving family. I had a lot of family support. I never lacked for anything in my life. Um,
okay,
I, every family has their dysfunction. So my
right,
family isn't perfect. Um, I had a lot of good examples in my life and I had a lot of bad examples in my life. I
right,
just, I made bad choices, and I try not to get into the whole blame game and blaming because my family is
right,
was very, I have a very involved family and um, a lot of my family members have been in prison. My sister is currently incarcerated. She just got she's about 5 years into her an 18-year sentence.
wow,
Um, so it's kind of been a theme in my family, but I don't want to, it's not a cop out. You know what I'm saying?
right,
I have a
right. No,
cousin
yeah, I totally hear what you're saying about
that grew
that.
up with us and we were all very close knit. We all had the same, pretty much the same upbringing. And she's a certified accountant. She's never been to prison. She's never been in trouble. You know, she saw that that wasn't the way to go. And my mom is a saint. I mean, I had wonderful examples in my life and I chose to make wrong choices. And
Okay. Okay. And that's good that when we take responsibility for our choices, that's a good thing instead of blaming, because that doesn't get us anywhere. So what prisons can you tell me what prisons you went to? Did you go to different prisons?
well, okay, I've been to every female institution in the state of Florida
Okay.
except for Hernando.
Okay.
So,
So, you went to Hillsborough then.
yes, yes. Hillsborough.
Okay, because I mean, I've heard wonderful things about Hillsborough.
There were two institutions that made a difference in my life. The first one was Levy, and it's closed down. They closed it the same year they closed Hillsborough down, actually. Levy was a work camp,
Right.
very small, very structured, um, but they didn't warehouse you. It wasn't a
Right.
warehouse for women. You know, the staff, because it was such a small institution, the staff really took the time to help you and to,
Right.
you know, and you had to have good behavior to be there. You couldn't, you know, if you were a problem, they got rid of you. You know, and I understand that there has to be maximum security institutions for people that are behavioral problems, but for those that aren't, and they just, there's nothing like that now, really. I mean, I think
No.
Hernando and Gadsden are probably the two closest institutions to that. Um, I haven't heard a lot of good things about Hernando though, so I can't, I know that it's nothing like Hillsborough. Hillsborough was, it was a godsend. Kathy, when you walked onto that institution, you felt the shift in the atmosphere. You know,
Mhm.
at the time when I got to Hillsborough, I had been incarcerated for 15 years. And
Wow.
I waited 6 years. I put in for the faith-based institution they, as soon as it became an option for us, because it was in Hillsborough County, and I'm from Hillsborough County. So really, I wanted to go there because it was closer to home. It took me
Right.
6 years to get there, and when I got there, I had already been at Levy for 3 years, and Levy is where I started setting my mind free. Because one of the things that happens, especially when you take somebody that is so young and you give them a lengthy sentence, is you you adapt to the prison mentality. It becomes a way of life.
Right.
Okay, and you have to learn how to live there, because you can't live in the free world and live incarcerated. You can't do both at the same time, not when you have a lot of time to do.
Right.
So so but it's kind of like walking a fine line, because it's very easy to get caught up in that. I used to call it a razor wire city, because your mind gets locked up too.
Right.
So going to Levy was when I started to like set my mind free. And then I got to Hillsborough, and Hillsborough was amazing. There was so much, the volunteers poured out so much love. You know, you have to understand that, mom, sorry. You have to understand that when we enter the institution, the message that is sent to us is that we are the dregs of society. We're like basically like trash being thrown away. And that's how you're treated by 96% of staff.
Right.
Um, it doesn't matter if you're not a whore, they treat you like a whore, you know. Um,
They call
you
you
have,
a whore.
well, yeah, you know, there is no, um, you know, and I have actually come to have like a personal relationship with some of the staff over the years, and
Right.
tell you that when they go to training, they tell them these women are they're they're nothing. They're going to
What?
manipulate. Yes, they tell them that, because they want to indoctrinate them to think, you know, because they don't want them bringing in drugs. They don't want them bringing in, you know, they don't want them having a personal relationship with us. So they have to depersonalize us, and they have to make us seem like we're villains,
Wow.
you know, and so that's how you're treated. You know, they take away your name, your number, you know, um, they take away your voice. Nothing that you say matters, you know.
Right.
Um, I had somebody tell me one time that when you go into the military and you go into boot camp, the reason for boot camp is that they strip you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they strip you and they take you down to like a very basic level, and then they build you back up. That's what the military does. It
Right.
strips you down and then it builds you back up. Prison does the same thing, except they never rebuild you.
Right.
You know, they're not. When the judge sentenced me in 1997, he told me the state of Florida is a punishment state, not a rehabilitation state, and I'm here to punish you.
Wow.
You know, I
How
did
old were
21
you, Dia, when you first went?
I was 21. Um,
Wow.
um, and I did 21 years in prison, and I never was allowed to take a vocational class because I had too much time.
Right.
And then when I got down to having less time, then they told me that I wasn't eligible for it, because now they have a ranking, and you have to have a ranking number. And what they do is they evaluate you, and they look at how many times you've been in prison, what your education level is, what your TABE scores are. And if you have high TABE scores and you have never been to prison, then they don't think that you need an education, because they don't think that you're statistically, it looks like you might not come back to prison. So they rank you And they only pay for an education for you if you are, basically, they told me that I would have to reoffend.
What? Oh my God. Crazy.
In order to get an education.
That is crazy.
Yeah. You know,
So,
I'm lucky. I have amazing family support and you know, I've been given a lot of blessings in my life, you know, so I haven't had to come out to nothing. But
right.
if I didn't have the family support that I have, then they would have let me out with $50, a bus ticket, and no education after doing 20.
And I don't know what.
No, I had an incoming phone call.
Oh, okay. So, wow. So most of the women in prison, I mean, this is my understanding. So most of the long timers and actually most of the women in prison have absolutely nothing to do.
No, especially, I mean, you know, when I first went in, you had more programs, you had more things to do.
Right.
Um, you know, they have slowly taken almost everything away. Um, you know, whether it's for funding or they've just, you know, at Hillsborough, they made it, when they closed Hillsborough down, um, they, the volunteers were still very much on board with us and they wanted to come. And when we went to the reception center, because they opened the reception center and they put us at the
Right.
center. And when we went to the reception center, the administration made it so hard for those volunteers to come into the institution. And it was like they didn't want them to care as much as they did, you know,
Right.
because, and you know, some of the volunteers, yes, they had been involved in a class action lawsuit against the state of Florida because they were closing down the only female faith-based institution, you know, and they fought against that, but with reason. You know, Hillsborough was a blessing for many, many, many people.
Right.
It was just, I'm I'm blessed that I was able to be a part of it. I really am. I
Right.
count it one of the big turning points in my life.
Right. And I've heard a lot of women say that about Hillsborough, that it really saved them.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it was just, you know, prison. You know, when the judge sentenced me, he sentenced me, and my punishment is to be taken out of society and to be away from my family. That's my punishment. You know, I don't think that being debased and being um, just put down every day and, you know, treated like some kind of subhuman life form is conducive to anybody being rehabilitated.
Right.
It's not. You know, if you want to rehabilitate somebody, I mean, you know, you have, obviously, we are already incarcerated, so you have a bunch of broken women in there,
Right.
you know, who come from all different kinds of places and all different cultures and different traumas, different things have happened to these women. And then you don't do anything to build them back up. And what you have to realize too, Kathy, is women are we are the nucleus of the family. I mean, how many of us are mothers that were incarcerated? You know, I mean, and what does that do to our children? You know, what kind of legacy does that pass on?
Right.
Especially when you incarcerate us and then you don't give us any tools to continue to be an active part of our children's lives, or to rehabilitate us so that when we do come home, if you have a short sentence, so when you do come home, you can be a productive member of society.
Right.
You know.
Wow. So, so I'm sure you experienced being harassed by the officers and treated horribly by the officers. And I'm sure there were some good officers, but for the most part, did you feel like most of them were not well trained and did not think much of the inmates there?
Well, I think that that's how they train them. They train them
That's
very
easy.
little. You know,
Wow.
um, you know, those officers that did see us as human and had compassion for us, most of those officers were ostracized by their fellow officers because they were too inmate friendly.
Right.
You know, and I understand there has to be a boundary. You know, I mean, if you're a counselor, you don't want to get too emotionally involved with the person that you're counseling. You know,
Right.
but um, you know, there's a lot to be said with having compassion and showing kindness to another human being.
Exactly.
Um, I was never. It took me 14 years of being incarcerated before I started going to church, and I started going to church at Levy, and it was a group that really I went because I wanted to take pictures and eat cake. Be honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the women in this group, and it was a group called Alpha, they were so loving. They were so accepting. They didn't care how you came or why you came, or they just they were so full of the love of God that it just came out, and
Mm-hmm.
couldn't help but feel it. You know what I'm saying? And so I saw something in them, and I was like, wow, you know, that's amazing to be like that. You know, because it's not easy to love somebody. You know, when you come into an institution, you don't know what I'm here for. You know, so it's I would think that it would be easy for them to judge us. You know, and
Right.
they weren't. They were very loving, very open to us, and I think that there's so many women in there that have never really been loved. You know, um, you know, there's some of us that have a wonderful family and that we just made mistakes, and you know, but for those that don't, for those that come from dysfunctional, destructive families, you know,
Mm-hmm.
those people made a difference in my life. I can only imagine the kind of difference that they can make in somebody else's life. You know.
So, what was your experience with medical? Did you have with medical?
I was very lucky in that aspect. I never really had any medical issues.
Did you do
So
yoga?
I do yoga. I try to stay healthy, and that was one thing that I did. You know, I took the initiative, and I learned how to take care of my body and how to take care of myself. And I've always been into, you know, fitness and being physically fit, um, and then I was introduced to yoga, and you know, so I've always been very healthy, thank God, you know,
Yeah,
and
thank God.
never really had any issues with medical. I mean, I've seen, you know, I could tell stories of other people, you know, and things that I've seen, and you know, and but that wasn't my experience. It's somebody else's
Right,
experience.
right. Um, so, so now you've been out since when did you say December?
Hmm.
And how are you doing being out? I mean, what are you experiencing? Is it overwhelming? Is it, I mean, I know you're happy you're out, but you know, when you've been institutionalized for that many years, it has to be difficult, you know,
Um,
to adjust.
okay, 2 weeks before I was released, my anxiety was so high that I broke out in hives all over my body because I was so
Wow.
anxious about coming home. I didn't know how I was going to deal with society. I didn't know how I was, just the thought of going to Walmart and shopping, I thought was going to be overwhelming. And I tell you, God is amazing because I have been so blessed. Like, I don't think I've had one. I had anxiety attacks all the time in prison. I was on medication for anxiety. I don't take medication out here. Um, I have, um, it's almost like I was never gone. My
Wow.
family is, my family is, oh, my oldest son is like, Mom, I can't even believe how well you have adjusted. And people that had been incarcerated for a long time or even for a short period of time that I kept in touch with were preparing me for what I was going to have to go through, and they were telling me it's going to be overwhelming, and you're going to go through things, and you're going to feel some
Right.
things. And I haven't I haven't experienced any of that.
Wow,
Um,
you're very lucky. Very lucky.
yes, I thought that I was going to be, I know that they actually have, um, it's like PTSD, but it's um,
Prison is something.
incarceration,
Yeah, I know what you're talking
post,
about.
yeah, post-incarceration syndrome, and it's actually, they're acknowledging it as something that really happens.
Right.
um but i I can't say, you know I think that, for me, um I had to go through some things in my life in order to get to where I am today, you know
Right.
and prison sucks. It sucks more now than it ever has before. Every day I think that the conditions get worse for women. um you know they're they're cutting funding. They're taking things away. you know Programs that that helped me. you know and I mean, no, I know all too well the pain of being away from your family and being incarcerated and being stripped of your identity. you know um so I'm not downplaying it at all, but some of the things that I went through made me the woman that I am today.
Right.
So it's not something that I'm proud of. You know, I don't wear prison like it's a badge of honor. I really, in my everyday life, I don't really talk about it a lot because I don't, it's not everybody's business. I don't look like I've been in prison for 20 years, and I don't walk around announcing it to people because I don't want to use it as a crutch.
Right.
You know, um, I just think that it's very important to talk about the real issues that women have, women that are incarcerated, that, you know, you know, I think you have to equip these women for freedom. I think that in my case, my sentence was incredibly harsh, and I know that there's a lot of cases of women that are incarcerated that their
Mhm.
sentences are incredibly harsh, and um, it almost makes you lose hope. You know, I had some moments in my time of incarceration where, if it wasn't for the fact that I have the family that I have, and the support that they gave me, um, I probably would have gotten swallowed up by the prison system, and I wouldn't be who I am today.
Right.
You know, because it's easy for that to happen. And so many women in there don't have family support. They don't have anybody that is gonna lift them up instead of constantly being beaten down, because that's what happens to you in there. And it's not just the staff either, you know, because you have other inmates that are predators,
Mm-hmm.
that prey on weak-minded people. So,
wow. So I think so. So with just say one, maybe one or two things that really, well, you've already said them. I mean, there's two things that really helped you get through that experience, and that was God, right? And your family. And
Yes.
without those two things, it's hard to get through anything when you go through something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, um, I think that there's a lot of people in there that don't, I mean, God, obviously, or whatever your spiritual, connection is,
Right.
um, is is there for everybody. You know what I'm saying? That kind of spiritual, hope is there for anybody that wants to find it. You know,
Right.
um, but I think it's really hard to reach out to something that you can't see unless you have something tangible in your life. That's why I think family is so important. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And
Right. Right.
and I think like the concept of love is very hard to grasp if you've never really felt it. You know,
Right.
and I think for so many women in there, their definition of love is tied into their sexuality or
Right.
their self-esteem. You know,
Right.
it's not tied into the principles and the things that the foundation that really makes you who you are. You know, um, and that's what frightens me about like places like Lowell. You know, where I mean it's a big warehouse. They just take everybody and they throw them there, and it doesn't. There's no there's no there's nothing there's no initiative for good behavior.
Right.
Institutions like Hillsborough and Levy, you know if you were well behaved, then people treated you with respect. you know and and it was it taught you a good work ethic. If you never had worked before, it taught you how to feel appreciated. It taught you, you had people that really took interest in what you were doing and how you were behaving. At Lowell, the people that misbehave get more privileges than the people that don't.
I know, and I don't understand that. Sadie has told me that. She said that the people that are acting out get the most attention, get the I don't understand that.
It's the atmosphere. It's the way that the institution is set up, because you have so many people there that have so much time. And so in order to keep things under control, the staff members almost like pacify the people that are the troublemakers.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
if I mean, yeah, they have confinement, but confinement gets full and they have to let them out, and then you have inmates that can't go anywhere because they've been red flagged
The red flag,
every
right?
institution. So there's nowhere for you to take them. So what do you do with them? So I mean, the staff ends up making concessions for them. Now, if somebody like Sadie or me does the things that they do, then they put us under the jail.
You're
you
right.
know, because that's just how it is. Because their concept of it is, oh well, you should know better. But um, it's just not it's not an atmosphere where you can really grow. you know and I think it's very important, for the state of Florida. The Department of Corruption. My mom says it's the Department of Corruptions. I just think it's very important for the state of Florida to 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 reinitiate, to reinstall programs that will help women that want help, because everybody isn't going to be there forever.
Right.
I went in, Kathy. I had 25 years I acted like I had a life sentence because I felt like I had a life sentence.
Right.
You know, but I made it through, and I'm home. And you know what? I'm a productive member of society today. I have a good job. I have a family that loves me and supports me. My kids are proud of me. You know, I'm not ever gonna go back.
Right.
You know, I mean, does that have a lot to do with the choices that I've made? Does it have to? But you know, my sister, unfortunately, you know, we come from the same family. This is her fifth time in prison. You know, so what is the difference? You know,
Right.
what is the difference? What is the difference? Was it places like Hillsborough and Levy that made a difference in my life? Yes. Was it, there was staff members? Yes, they were terrible staff members. There were staff members that I don't even want to talk about. You know what I'm? But there was also staff members that poured into me and that helped me and that built me up and that made me the woman that I am today. You know,
Right.
so it's all about, you know, I think that that I can say that in some ways prison was very good for me, you know, because I was on a path for destruction, you know. Um, but when I think about the women that are in there now and the way that I left things, um, it breaks my heart. You know, it breaks my heart because I know that there's so many women in there, and it's not. I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be there because everybody committed a crime, you know, and you have to you have to pay your debt to society, you know. Are there some people in there that maybe didn't commit a crime and are just, you know, everybody has a story, you know.
Right.
Um, but I think that there's not a lot of hope within the walls anymore. You know,
Right.
I think that they are slowly being, even women that have strong faith and that have good family support have are being emotionally and physically drained of hope every day in there, because
Right.
that's the environment that is prevalent in the prison system in Florida right now.
Right. Wow. And we need to change that somehow, some way.
You know, Florida needs to get with the times. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there's you know, if they just look at some of the other institutions in other states, and you know, I mean, and if it's about money, you know, other institutions, the state of Florida spends so much money on prisons. Other institutions make money. I mean, you know, other states make money. You know,
Right.
it's not about what you do; it's about how you do it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you have so many resources in there. You know.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, and not to mention the fact that we're over incarcerating people. I mean, there's a lot of people in there that could be on house arrest or,
Hmm.
there's
Yeah,
other
they're
alternatives.
they're closing down one of the women's work release centers.
I saw that.
You
I
know,
heard that.
and it's just like, you know, I mean, they have so many more work release centers for men. You know, I mean, I know that there's more men in prison. Okay, but statistically speaking, women are less likely to reoffend than men are.
Right.
So why do you keep taking programs away from the women? I mean, you know, and it's not saying, you know, because I know that there's lots of men in prison too, you know, but you know, I'm not a man and I was in a male institution. I was in a female institution, you know,
Right.
and what is the fabric of our families? You're talking about mothers, you know. I mean, you know, my children were 3 and 5 when I got incarcerated. They spent their whole life without me.
Right.
You know, I mean, are they well adjusted? Did my mother raise them? You know, my kids didn't go to foster care, you know. So I have to give a lot of credit to my mom, there again, my family, but there's so many women in there that don't have that.
Right.
My story is not the typical story of somebody that's incarcerated, you know, just like me getting out and being able to adjust so quickly. That doesn't normally happen.
Right.
That's very atypical. That's not your typical response. Most women that were incarcerated for the amount of time that I was incarcerated get out and they're emotionally crippled.
Right.
You know, not to mention the fact that it's just an atmosphere where you can be victimized.
Right. Exactly. Okay. I think we're done. I just got a phone call. Sadie's already called me, so I don't have to worry about that. So I really want to thank you, Dia. It was a wonderful interview, and gosh, it breaks my heart that you were there for 22 years.
21 and a half.
20, 21 and a half, because it just seems so, especially in that environment, thank God for Hillsborough. But, you think of all those women, I think of Sadie, who has 11 more years in that hellhole, that horrible place. And, gratefully, she's a pretty strong person, but still, as a mom, and I'm sure your mom went through it, as a mom, it's just heartbreaking to see, what they go through.
Oh yeah. Well, our biggest victims are our families. And I know that other people might argue that point and, talk about other victims, but I know my biggest victims were my family, what I
Right.
put my family through just with my absence, not just, and, not that my kids were a burden to my mother, but, I was supposed to raise them, not her, she took on
Right, right,
responsibility, and,
right.
you know, but, we can only, you know, keep, I hopefully they're going to start restoring our rights so that we can vote and maybe we can start raising some awareness about some of the things that are
Yes,
needed.
voting in the right people. Yeah, voting in the right people to change all of this. And I mean, I know Sadie and I have talked, and every experience that we have in life is an opportunity for us to grow and learn. Even prison, and Sadie and I have talked about. I mean, prison saved her life. I mean, she would have been dead, really.
Yeah, I
And
know. Me and Sadie, we had some pretty deep conversations about things.
right. So, in that respect, but then in another respect, the environment that you're placed in is not conducive for you to, unless you're a really strong person like you and Sadie, it's not conducive for you to grow and change and